Good day, Captain Philip and Aquino, to our classmates, and to anyone who could be viewing this right now. My name is Baguin John Dave, and today I am going to present my midterm period individual project. So in here we have a set of questions, and let's begin with number one. So if the variation and deviation are given, how do we determine the compass error? So in here we have our example number one, which is a variation of 5 degrees east and a deviation of 3 degrees east. And since they have the same names, then we will add them. So 5 plus 3 is equals to 8, and that gives us the compass error of 8 degrees east. Moving on to our second example, which is a variation of 5 degrees east and deviation of 3 degrees west. And since they don't have the same names, then we will subtract them. So 5 minus 3 is equals to 2, and that gives us the compass error of 2 degrees east. So it's important to take note that in naming not the same names, always choose the direction which is of greater value. So with our example number 2, since the direction which is of greater value is east, then we named our compass error east. Moving on to number 2, if the compass error and the variation are given, how do we determine the deviation? So in here we have our example number 1, and that is a compass error of 4 degrees east and a variation of 2 degrees east, and we should change it to west. And since now that they don't have the same names, then we will subtract them. So 4 minus 2 is equals to 2, and that gives us a deviation of 2 degrees east. Moving on to our second example, which has a compass error of 4 degrees east and a variation of 2 degrees west, and we will change it to east. And now that they have the same names, then we will add them. So 4 plus 2 is equals to 6, and that gives us a deviation of 6 degrees east. It's important to take note that in naming not the same names, always choose the direction of the greater value, and always reverse the name of the variation. Moving on to number 3. If the true bearing and compass bearing are given, how do we determine the compass error? So in here we have our examples. And before that, we have to take note, we have to remember that if the compass bearing is lesser than the true bearing, the error is east. And if the compass bearing is greater than the true bearing, then the error is west. So in here, going back to example 1, which is a true bearing of 170 degrees and a compass bearing of 165 degrees. So in here, we have to always subtract. So 170 minus 165 gives us 5, and that gives us a compass error of 5 degrees east. Why east? Because the compass bearing is lesser than the true bearing, so we named it east. Moving on to our second example, which has a true bearing of 95 degrees and a compass bearing of 103 degrees. Since the compass bearing is bigger than the true bearing, then we already know that we will be naming this west. So 103 minus 95, that is 8, and that gives us the compass error of 8 degrees west. Moving on to number 4. If the compass course, deviation, and variation are given, how do we determine the true course? So in here we have a given example. And it's important to take note that in here we are using the Can Dead Man Vote Twice, or the CDMVT. And it's important to remember that if it's east, then we will add it. And if it's west, then we will subtract it. Here is our solution. So we have a compass course of 88 degrees and a deviation of 7 degrees west. And since it's west, then we will subtract it from our compass course. And that gives us the magnetic heading of 81 degrees. And next we're going to do is we're going to apply our variation of 4 degrees east. And since it's east, then we will add it to our magnetic heading, which is 81 plus 4. And that gives us our true course of 85 degrees true. Moving on to number 5. The true course, variation, and deviation are given. How do we determine the compass course? So in here we have our given example. And it's important to take note that in here we are using the 2 Virgos make the compass, or the TVMDC. And we have to remember that if it's east, then we have to subtract. And if it's west, then we have to add it. Here's our solution. In here we have a true course of 72 degrees and a variation of 3 degrees east. And since it's east, we have to subtract it from our true course of 72 degrees and minus 3, and that gives us a magnetic heading of 69 degrees. Then next is we are going to apply our deviation of 8 degrees west, and since it's west, we have to add it to our magnetic heading of 69 plus 8, and that gives us 77, and that's a compass course of 77 degrees. Lastly is number 6. Explain how to update variation in the compass rose. So in here we have our compass rose with a magnetic variation of 4 degrees 15 minutes west, which is in 2009, and it has increased about 8 minutes east annually. So the question is, by the year 2021, what will be the updated variation? So here's our solution. So we have to bring out the year 2021 and subtract it to the year 2009, and that gives us the difference of 12 years. Multiply it to the annual increase of 8 minutes, and that gives us the product of 96 minutes, which can be translated to 1 degrees 36 minutes east. And since our variation of 2009 does not have the same direction with our updated variation of 2021, then we will subtract them. So 4 degrees 15 minutes west of our 2009 subtracted to 1 degrees 36 minutes east, we have 2 degrees 39 minutes west. And our updated variation for the year 2021 is 2 degrees and 39 minutes west. So that would be all for my part, and these are for the references. And that would be all. Thank you, and may God bless us all.